Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Harebrained Games. Today we're going to do a review of a game called Voidfall by Nigel Buckle and David Shirtsey. I think it's called Voidfall because you want to avoid having it fall on your foot because it will break it. It is a big Euro meets 4X style game with a lot of components and a lot of meat to it. So I'm just going to get into the review. Okay, let's take a look at what comes inside Voidfall. This is the Galactics Box edition, which means it comes with a free coupon for a galaxy inside. Not really. There's a lot to unpack here, and I don't mean that metaphorically. This game took probably an hour to unpack and set probably an hour and a half actually to set it up, get everything organized. Thankfully, the trays. Usually I hate game trays of any kind, and this one actually surprised me. So let's take a look at that now. What you get is a whole lot of components. Now these are the Voidborn, the orange. Anything orange is bad, so pumpkin lovers beware. And then you get a lot of various these are for putting ships on when you go into the galaxy, etc. Everyone's going to get a player mat. There's up to 4 of these suckers that play out. This is where you're going to be doing most of your focus here, as far as, well, when you're not looking at the map or the galaxy display, etc. But everyone gets these. They're very thick, and they're slotted, so you can slip what in there? Well, you can slip these. These are the actual civilizations that you can bring in, factions that you can bring in. Each one is named differently. Lots of them have different characteristics, different starting situations, etc. There's a lot in here, and that you can unpack that. Also, there's a pretty stark break in components because you have 3 different modes. You've solo play, you've got co-op play, and you've got competitive play. This is for the solo/co-op, and these we'll get into later. These are not for checking. These are not tongue depressors. There's something far, far greater. Also, underneath, you get a whole variety of hexes, and these tiles will be used to set up and configure a map based on player count and scenarios, of which there are many. You also have certain cards that you're going to play for the co-op game where they drive the the bad guys basically over the course of the game. Particularly useful in co-op because you're all working together to fight against them. And then we have galactic event cards as well. What else do you get? Well, here's the factions. Each factions, and this is a nice little stack, all of these factions have varying pieces to them. Some have extra cards that replace your normal cards that you play. They have different technologies, and so you'll be looking at different setup, different technologies they get to start with, not just explore. Tons of those inside. Also, you're going to get the galactic map, or the big galactic chart. This is what drives the game. This is the high-level brain power that drives the game. All the flow of the game is represented here. Iconographically, we'll learn about that later. Also, we have the agenda play, and this is where you're going to set up high-level agendas for your civilization. This is how you score personal victory points, it's ultimately about victory points. They call them something different, but we'll just call them what they really are underneath the surface until I remember the exact name of them, which is points of some kind. Glory tokens. Silly me. I should have remembered. Yes, it's glory tokens. That's what you get. You have research. There's common research tracks here. Again, Game Trays provided a nice little tray that you can look at. You can explore these and research these. Research these over the course of the game. And then you've got a setup for a particular player count scenario, etc. You got those. Again, we've seen the board that we're going to be setting up to show you. Everyone gets these dials. Components are just top quality. These are really solid dials. These control your food, your energy, your materials, your currency, your science. All of these drive the game for you as you play. And also we have, these are all the other ships. Lots of ships. There's still ships for those silly Voidborn, and then there's other different types of ships, each with their different abilities and skills that you're going to deploy yourself out into the universe. This is the combat flowchart. Combat is deterministic. There's no random rolls. You will know the outcome of a battle ahead of time, so we'll get into that later. And then you got your score count, your power, is little ways to set up your tableau for knowing how far you advance on different tracks. This is the power that drives your fleets. And then of course, we're going to play House Bellaton. This is going to be how we're going to show the general idea of game flow using the tutorial setup. I'm not going to do a playthrough, it's too massive. There are about 17 playthroughs that I saw of varying quality on the internet that may help you or aid you once you get into this game. Yes, and then we have the... Look at that, House Peloton. Look at that. So anyway, that's what we have, except for one other thing. You have not one, not two, but three, but four different resources that are going to aid you in your quest to learning this game. One is the rule book. The rule book is very, very detailed. Lots and lots of pictures, lots and lots of explanations that go through how you set up to play the game, then go over the general rules, and then a lot of exceptions to rules based on which mode you're playing. Because of the various modes, you're going to see more details. All the modes are called out, though. When you see, like, for example, competitive mode, anything custom or unique to that is going to be spelled out in this color. Anything cooperative that says, hey, I just only care about the cooperative part, you're going to see those reconciled with a blue section, such as this. So that's a good starting point. Not only is that provided, but they also provide you with a list of tokens, and I'm not going to lie, there is a lot of iconography going on here. This page is only opens to that page and that page and that page. Lots and lots of iconography. Be warned. There's a compendium, and this is where you really start to see the game come together. It gives a little history, which is it's not a trite backstory. I really like it. I think they did a good job of making something clever and creative. And then it tells you the general setup. Again, lots of exceptions. You know, if you're setting up stuff for the different modes, you're going to have to branch between those modes and ignore or do some steps. But then you get into the tutorial, and then these are all the scenarios that you can play that are in this game, each one described and explained, so you can customize your gameplay experience. And finally, we have the glossary. This is superfluous in some ways, but ingeniously valuable in other ways. It literally goes through every single component in the game and gives you a specific explanation in words of what that icon does. This is essential to me, and I have used it tremendously. It is really, really valuable. It helps you fill in, like, hey, if I pick this house, what are abilities, and it shows you and explains them. You get a real good beat on it. Then you get technologies; those are explained. All the different galactic events, everything's explained here. You will not be lacking for information and ways on how to play this game. All right, let's go over an example of how you play. Okay, let's do an overview of the flow of play of Voidfall. Now I want to present a caveat, as I often do in games of a more complex nature. This is not a playthrough. There are a lot of playthroughs out there on the internet already that will go through the paces of this game and do so with tremendous detail. I want to give this opportunity to show the game at a higher level for people who just want to get an example of how you would play this game. I'll do my best. Everyone starts with a given house/faction, and they have these starting settings. It all is iconographic now, but all that means is that everything on this chart matches this side, and then you look out here on your first two starting spaces and you match it up accordingly. What are you doing? Well, the purpose of the game, we should start with that, is to win. You win by having the most glory points at the end of 3 cycles. That's right, it's cycular. When you are starting off with your custom house, you will have these information. When you're done, it tells you everything you need to know. 2 power, like for example, we have inactive power and active power. This power can instantly go in and help bolster a fleet out there. When you're done, you flip it over, it becomes your first agenda card. There's going to be a lot of terms you're going to hear, and I'll try to explain them as best as you can. You're going to go through 3 cycles. These 3 cycles are basically 3 galactic shifts, where some global state is going to change about the game. Then you do the part that you're stoked about, which is you do rounds. A certain amount of rounds every one of these cycles, and on each round every player gets a turn. So that's kind of the flow of it. You've got cycles, which are big galactic shifts. You've got rounds, which is a number of rounds wherein everybody takes a turn. That's the nomenclature. Here you have the galactic map, and these are really, really sturdy. I'm going to actually show you kind of this. These are double-sided, double-layered. That's cool. on the back. Different scenarios often have different custom settings. We're doing the basic example here. This is what you would set up if you're going to go through their suggested tutorial. And so we're going to go and set that back up, but you can see the meatiness of the components. I've set this up. Again, it's a dizzying amount of stuff going on, but we're going to focus on just the flow because a lot of these things just fall into place as a result of playing through that flow. It is cycle 1. This is the main driver of everything in the game as far as where you're at and what you can and cannot do. This is step A. The first step is it's a preparation phase of sorts. It says, let's get the world to be what we want it to be. We've got trade tokens. They sit here. Some games will let you, well, some games, some cards, some actions will let you grab these trade tokens. They're useful for a couple things. You can use them to get the most out of a card you play, or you can use them to reduce the expenditures in a certain way as well. You also have special technologies here, not just the things you can research from everybody generally, but these are not available in cycle 1. You have to wait till cycle 2, and then on cycle 3, you swap those out for different cards if there's any left. So all of these things are going on again. Like it's in a more than solo player game, this would be your player order turn. Here is where the galactic event is going to say, okay, we've done the prep work. We've got everything in line. We've done the little busy work. Now we're going to do something galactically, and then we're going to have you take actions. And that's really where we're going to start. So before that, though, I do want to explain what you're doing when you're sitting there by yourself with your own little tableau. You have these cool little see-through things to upgrade your technologies. You've got, again, fleet power. This drives your fleets. You've got cards you're going to play and agendas. Agendas score at certain points in the game. And you're going to see on everything you do, there's some sort of iconography that you're going to have to go into and understand. Once you do, it's really, really consistent. So here, for example, these are the glory points. And so you're going to see that a lot. Yes, looks like an iceberg is flipping you off. Pure sector, you're going to see that a lot too. But for every sector you have that doesn't have any of those nasty voidborns in it, you're going to get 3 points at a certain point in the game. And you're going to be able to collect these and do things with them. And then the other thing is these cards. This is really the heart of what you do. These cards, they look kind of daunting, but each one of them represents some sort of aspect of what you can do during your rounds, your turns, during the rounds of a cycle. So what do these do? Well, again, we're back to iconography. Some of these are pretty simple. Like for free, I can bump this over here and get, hey, I get free currency and I get a free increase in my science. Yay. Some of these cost, I have to pay some food and energy, and then I can get rid of one of those void-born puppies. And I could even shift around my military forces. So that's just one example. All of these have 3 actions you can do and on your turn for these cards. And you're going to play as many cards as there are rounds in a given cycle. The key here and the resources have to come into play as well. On the one side, you've got your yield here. This is whenever you decide to produce, this is how much you're going to produce. So this is your constant knowledge of how much you're going to get every time you produce. And this is the stockpile of that production. So when you spend resources to do things, you're spending it here. You're spending your stockpile. But when it's time to increase or decrease your yield, well, you'll do that naturally by flipping this dial. And the thing is interesting is it's not a one-to-one too. It's not like, oh, I produce 3 resources, therefore I get 4. No, you have a conversion rate. So food right now, if I'm level 2 with my food, I'm going to produce 1 food. If I beef that up, then I'm going to get 2, 3 accordingly. So it's a pretty clever system. Really, really like it. And how do you increase that? Well, sometimes you're going to have opportunities to increase your population. Say I increase that to 4. Well, guess what? Now my food pop is 4, which means I'm going to get 3 every time I produce. So you see how that goes. Anyway, so we're going to do this. So we've done nothing here. Everything's back in order. Again, I'm skipping a lot of parts because I'm just showing you the game. This is step 1, from the ashes. This is the first cycle. This is the opening, the opening ceremony of the Galactic Cycle Olympics. So everything that doesn't have a dotted border, you have to do. So reminder: read the tutorial for cycle 1 in the compendium. I'm not going to bore you, but you should read it. It's a very well detailed page. And Then it says discard the following cards. Because this is a specific tutorial card, you won't normally see this happen. But what it tries to do is get you to get rid of certain cards that really aren't going to teach you the basics of the game like other cards will. And then move the void crunchy from your track. Oh yeah, so I had that wrong. Anyway, onto your outpost sector. So we'll set that there because that still matters. And then we're going to move the void that we initially placed, and we're going to move that onto my outpost sector. What does that mean? Well, now it's not pure, which means that I'm not going to be able to score points from it. There's a few things I can still do. I can still generate production, whatever. Knowing the backstory, basically, think of them as sort of a plague, a galactic, plague, like mind plague, mind plague that kind of corrupts. And think of it that way. It's corrupted. It's not destroyed. I need to get rid of. Yes. So there you go. So we've basically just done the first big galactic event. So now what? Well, are we done? No. Because now we have 3, and the different cards have different numbers on them. We have 3 different opportunities to play 3 cards. So basically 3 rounds, and each of those rounds, and all these iconographies, you're going to ignore them pretty soon because it will all become second nature. You play a card. You do 2 of the actions on the card. If you have one of these trade tokens, because you got one somewhere along the way, prior to this turn, you can use them, and then you can do all 3. So it just gives you a little boost. You do all those things, and you can also collect agenda cards. And these are other things that you can do. When you collect these, you can also play those. So you can basically do this if you wanted to. You could do a mega turn if you wanted to, and do actions. The core here you do. The agenda cards here, if they match up, which this one doesn't, so I'd have to find one that did match up icon to icon. So if I played a production value here, well, I get to do this fun thing for free as well. And that's awesome, right? Yay! And this, again, I could use it. You could do all kinds of stuff to configure ways to boost your actual turn on a given round. When you do those things, you just do what it says. For example, we moved that over. This one lets us get resources, and because some of these let you do one or the other, some of them let you do both of them. You can score glory for every uncorrupted sector that's got some of these in there. So they're little bits and pieces of ways to get glory points throughout the game, not just at the end of it. When you're done with that, then you do a cleanup. And you have to get rid of this token. If you used it, it goes back on the board. Also, when you grab it, you get the special ability. But again, this is not a playthrough. This is just things you can do. Or you can set it here if you haven't used it. And now you don't have to pay the cost. Yay, because the cost is coming up. We haven't talked about that yet. And then you can place this somewhere here as an agenda that's going to score you these things. So yeah, all right, for every uncorrupted sector, with 4 plus, if I have 4 uncorrupted sectors, I get 4 points. Yay. And this is a multiplier. For technologies I get 2 for each one. Like there's 4 different types of agendas, and so you can't have the same agenda type in the same spot. So if I couldn't grab another one of these of the same type, I could grab a different type, and you can see on the backs that they're different. So I could have one of those. You can ditch and replace if you want, but generally speaking, you want to try and fill this up as much as you can with awesome ways to earn points over time. That's what we got for that. So we would take our actions. We take example 3 of these actions, do some things. Some of the actions will let you move or reconfigure or bolster. For example, if you want to increase your fleet power, well, you go here, oh yay, now I've got 3 power. And the fleets are interesting here. These are not necessarily you could put 3 ships here, each with 1 power. It doesn't matter. You can mix and match those just fine. It's not a big deal. Only except for the fact that at the end, when it's time to reconcile, at the end of your turn, you can only have 2 of these ships and up to their maximum fleet power. So you are capped at how much you can power. You can't just put everything into one big killer fleet and send it across the galaxy. So something to keep in mind. But you can move, like you could say, hey, you know what, I can move fleet power around. You've got ways to do that. bolster it. Technologies, for example, I have a starting technology that says that if I have a certain type of unit present, then I'm going to get initiative. That goes into combat. Combat is interesting again, and I'm not see some of the great playthroughs to understand, or consult the manual because it's really good at explaining this. But combat is very much simple. You are when it's time to do combat and you go in to do combat, you're going to be doing evaluations. It's purely mathematical evaluations. You have an approach and certain units that you have. There's certain like defense mechanisms and bases and stuff that are going to help you basically go, okay, if you come into my sector, I'm going to do damage. I get to do approach damage. And then you have certain units, certain starships that do approach shielding. Okay, yay, so you did the approach. Then you go into this salvo and you just go around and you're just damaging each other. With initiative, you get to go first and second, and you go back and forth. If you have certain units, they have a certain ability. Like if you had nothing, no specials at all, this is your combat, and it's very simple. But because you bring in other units, if you have those units present, well, then now you have other special abilities. It's a really elegant, deterministic system. Highly impressed. I'm getting into my comments already, but there you go. These are the things that you can continue to do, and you're going to do this. So you're going to finish up round 1. Do your 3 actions, and then you're going to go into this final section here, which says, okay, consolidate, or do a Voidborn attack. If you had Voidborn corruption and right now we don't, but if you had enough of a presence of the Voidborn, then you would do a skirmish, and that will mess with you. Every cycle, it's going to mess with you. Then you do payment, and for each of these here, you have to pay a food. So you've got certain icons that say, hey, like here, like if I was to basically expand my empire and add a science guild, and these are ways, again, like you add these in and then they're worth 2, so basically it's a typical 4x build up. Then, but I got to pay a cost. I got to pay a food for this at the end of every cycle if I'm going to build up like that. Same thing with these. You could build up certain installations that let you help defend or augment your sector, and they're worth food. So you count up all those icons and you pay a food for each. If you can't pay a food, well, you pay other resources, but you have to pay double them, so it's more efficient to use food. And then if you don't, you lose glory points, because people don't glorify you when they're starving, I guess. And that's it. And then you get, like, this card is out, and you're like, yay, well, that was fun. And oh no, I'm kidding, because the first thing you do is you go, okay, here's the galactic way that everybody can earn points. So if and again, the iconography, I'm not going to go into it. I had no problem like quickly looking it up, and once you're in the middle of the game, some stuff becomes so smooth and natural that you really just kind of lose sight. Other than a couple odd things, you're fine after a while, but there is a curve. So you're gonna get this. So if you have pure sectors, and I forget this one, we'll go down to this one. Yeah, so if you have 5 sectors that have 5 pure sectors. If you have 5 sectors that don't have corruption in them and resources on them, then you're going to get to do this. You're going to get this special action. It's going to go one or the other. This is, as you can see from the red here, it's one or the other. So boost your power, boost one of your fleets. Plus you get an extra currency. Here you're going to get extra currency. So that's kind of cool. Other ones are, if you have 9 sectors that are pure, then you get that. If you have 3 technologies, etc., you get it. So then you're going to reconcile the points there, and then you score your personal agendas, and you go here and go, okay, well, now I've got all these agendas. If you have a corruption, and there's a ways that you have to, when you get corruption, void corruption, sometimes you got to put them in places. If you put them here, for example, you don't get to score this. Like you can put it here and you can hope for it, but if it's corrupted, then you don't get that. Otherwise, you go through each of these in sequence and you go, how much glory, how much glory, how much glory, and these are all about getting glory. And you're going to do this in the hopes that you get the maximum amount of glory within the 3 cycles of games that you play. And that's it. That's really the essence at its most heart of what you do. You prepare, and that again is the easiest, fastest of them, and then you go through and you do the galactic card and go, what big things happened? What's in the news? Then you play 4 actions, 4 cards, or whatever this says. You play that many cards and do whatever that says. And then you clean it up and figure out points, do some battling, etc. And again, after like cycle 2, suddenly you can buy these. Cycle 3, you're going to be able to buy those instead of those. It goes on and on. And then it's all about the points. And again, this is the basics. From here, you can get a lot more elaborate. You can have co-op mode, and co-op mode, like I said, comes with other pieces and cards that help drive that mode that will they're pretty smooth. They're just as smooth as the rest of this, to be honest with you. It looks so daunting, and yet it flows so smoothly. Like my wit! Not. You also have, again, the scenarios that you can pick. Co-op, competitive, etc. All that fit in with the lore and then work fine. You've got different technologies that you're going to explore through the course of the game. You've got a lot going on. But hopefully this was at least somewhat of a basic instructional example of how you would play Voidfall. Let's get into my final thoughts. Okay, final thoughts on Voidfall, the game by Nigel Buckle and David Searcy. As always, we get into the cons first, then we get into the pros, finally with my final thoughts. So let's get into the cons right now. The content and scope on this game are staggering. For some people, it's going to be too staggering. This is not a game you're going to find on a Walmart or Target shelf end cap and say, hey dear, this might be fun at the barbecue. No, if you're buying Voidfall, you are making an intentional purchase almost assuredly, and you have intentional hopes that is going to fulfill your desire for a 4X game or a Euro game or an amalgamation of each. It is epic. That is less of a con than a caveat of entry, that you must be this ready to ride this ride. The other thing that came to me that I was not necessarily, that did not work well with me, is I wasn't a big fan of the interleaving in the rule book of for someone with my sequential brain. It is difficult for me to handle the interleaving of the rule book, the instructions for the various modes. That was something that I struggled with for a while, and why it took so long from the time I received it till now was that I set it off until I could really dive in and focus and frown and squint to get it going. It's not a right or wrong thing. There's nothing bad about the manual or the rule book or any of the accompanying guides. It's just I don't do well when you interleave instructions and then pull people in and out of contexts. When you're popping and pushing context on and off a stack of learning, it's not how I do best. I generally would have appreciated, I would have liked, although I know the ramifications of it, to say, this is for the co-op, and yes, is it duplicated? Maybe duplicates with competitive, but at least everything is here sequentially without having to pop in and out. Or I would have liked tutorial, competitive, and co-op all separated more clearly than they were. That said, if you are going to interleave those instructions in a rulebook, you're not going to find a better way of doing it. It definitely was as clear as I could expect, and better than I would have expected for doing so. It's something that didn't resonate with my brain as much. The tutorial itself, for example, was not discrete because you're putting it together. I would want hey, we're going to run you through the tutorial. We're going to give you these steps, we're going to pull everything away and have you focus on this, versus you're setting this up, but for the tutorial use this and then run these, or ignore these things, ignore this color and that color but not that color, ignore this icon and that kind but only through circle 1 then circle 2. If that's something that is going to be offsetting for you, you're probably not going to be as amenable as I was to learning it, unless you're really going, I'm going to learn this, I'm making a driven decision to do so. The other thing is, no matter how brilliant the iconography is, it's overload. This game is very overloaded on icons. There's just no getting away. It's still a quantity of icons that you're going to have to grasp and understand. That's a negative for people who are going to be off-put initially by it. It's not problematic innately because of the icons, which we'll learn about when I get into my pros. Also, this is not a cinematic game. This is not a thrill ride. This is not a raucous affair. This is not, some certain 4X games, for example, get really into like, yeah, you sank my starship kind of thing. That's not what this is. This is not that game at all, and it doesn't even claim to be, really. For example, you have determinism in combat. There's no surprises there. You're going to see exactly how this thing plays out, and it's going to play out exactly as you expect. It has an incredible depth of branching options, and you're going to be mixed in with that all over the place. And honestly, it's I think a natural byproduct of it not being this cinematic, affair is that it's the reality of mixing a 4X framework in a full, pure, unabridged Euro game setting. So, combat itself, for example, it's cerebrally satisfying, but again, it's not remotely cinematic in nature. So if you're looking for a thrill, if you're looking at the box and it's like, man, starships colliding, missiles going everywhere, there are so many other games that will do that for you. This isn't where it excels. The other thing is there's just simply a baseline complexity level. No matter how streamlined the actual core rule set, game flow is, there are many moving parts, and they're all moving in unison, and they're all moving together well, and they're all very rational, but you're still engorged with options to choose from, and that may weigh you down. The various modes have starkly varying elements to them, and so you'll have to be aware of that. It is, if you cross the streams mentally between co-op, oh, that's right, that's the co-op rule. Then you may find that crossing the streams may be taxing. That's something to consider as well. Again, if you are someone coming in, and I mean, if you look at complexity as a challenge and you want to rise up to, none of these are going to be problematic for you. The other thing is the lengthy setup leading to lengthy sessions, leading to lengthy teardown. There's no shortcuts here. You are diving into the deep end of the pool, and so you shouldn't complain that you can't touch bottom. This is not a game that's going to be a quick setup to streamline, to trim, to speed up. I actually feel like it's, for the experience, it's fine, but again, that is something, again, it's less of a con that the game itself is flawed. It's more of a be prepared that this is going to be the experience. You're setting it up and it's going to take a while. You might be able to play 3 or 4 games of Splendor in the time that you play it, that you get this set up for the first time as a first time player. The sessions are going to be long and thinky and deep, and the teardown, despite the tremendous quality of the packaging and the storage, it still takes time. So if those are, and larger player counts, you want to really have people prepared and ready to play, or be willing to be very, very patient as you teach people bit by bit over time. Just be prepared. This is not a game you're going to laugh and, spring this on an unsuspecting person at a bar or a bar mitzvah. This is something you're diving into with the intentional understanding that it's going to be a while, and you're going to be all in, and it's going to take time. And again, the scope of choices can be dizzying. You have choices. You have choices with add-ons, trade tokens. You have choices with agenda cards that you can add on. You have lots of things to consider. Those cards you have in your hand, those are quadruple use cards, triple use cards, but they matter. Everything you're looking at, you have a lot to consider. So if that's going to be overwhelming for you, I will let you know that that's going to be overwhelming with you. So, and again, set expectations to library mode. This is not exciting. This is not a deep. This is not a frolic adventure. I mentioned that before, but just it's a deep, frowning, puzzly fun that you're going to have from this, or that I had from it. And the reason I bring that up again is because I did have several friends who just did not like this game. They really didn't like it. They were hoping for something a little more exciting. They didn't really get into it. They felt it was dry. They felt that it was not necessarily indicative of a 4X experience in the same way that I did. So let's just move into what I liked about it. I mentioned that the content and scope were staggering as something to be aware of. One of the best things about this game is that the content and the scope is staggering. It is immense. You get a ton in this box. Yeah, it's a big box, but lots of big boxes can have air. This doesn't have a section of air in it at all. Everything is purposeful, meaningful, and built to take this foundation of the game you're playing and build it off in different directions in different ways so that you could play this game over and over. And if you're not just bored by again the flow of play, and you like the interesting ideas that different things are going to hit you, different factions and houses are going to have different, really different stark differences. To me, stark differences: the technologies, your research, the modes, the co-op, the competitive, the scenarios, all the things going on. Like, it is staggering amount of quantity and content, which I find a plus. I don't think there's ever I will never turn down someone trying to do more than less to give me value for my money, not only in just in the components, but in the gameplay. But getting into it, the rulebook is a masterpiece level rulebook. I know that there's a lot there and people glaze their eyes over at pages, but once you've read it and once you've gotten into the game and you read it again, you see just the genius of consistency, of iconography, of explanation, just colorful, richly explained and contextually explained. When things needed to be explained as, hey, there's a reason you're doing this. This is why you're doing it. It's explained why you're doing it, so that you're not like, oh, I don't get that rule. Why are we do? Oh, okay. So they're doing that because it makes this happen. The information presentation of games, I think, of manuals, honestly, it's an art and a science. It really is, and it takes a really good, meister or of some sort to be able to put all that together of a game with this huge scope. And this rule book is up to the scope of this game. It's paramount. It delivers. Not only does it deliver, it pampers. You've got not only the rule book, but you have the icons. And yes, some people go like, 4 pages of icons. Really? That's too much. Maybe it is. I don't know. But I can tell you that all those icons they become second nature very, very quickly. They're very consistent amongst themselves. They're provided for you, so you don't have to go look it up in a 30-page rulebook on the back. It's there. And once you get the consistency, you find the icons are actually categorized. So once you get the categories down, the rest of it's just like, okay, everything, it's very well explained. If you're going to have a bunch of icons, the way to do it is the way they did it. Not only that, you get the rulebook, which again, it's the core, and then you get the compendium, which tells you how to set up the base stuff, and then you go off based on which scenario and tweak it however, and they've got all this nice ring bound. And then you've got the glossary of terms, and they didn't have to do this. They gave you, you get every single description. If you're wondering what this card says in its short text, you go right to that part of the book, and it's there and it's just like there for you. Like, it's like, talk about being pampered. Yeah, pampered is the word for it. This coupled with the very active presence of the designers on forums makes this a real plus in my book. The other thing is, and again, I'll speak to the icon consistency and the presentation of pieces. It's overwhelming as a baseline. Like, there's so much there. But it's consistent. It's orderly. It's in the right place to find. Again, a Herculean effort to present information as tightly as possible was performed here, and I applaud them for it. The components themselves are consummate with the cost. This was not a cheap game, particularly the Galactic Edition. But you get double-sided, double-layered boards for tiles, for example. Your ships and stands, they're high quality, they fit well, they're snug, no issues with that. The dials and the tokens are solidly constructed, they work really well, there's no looseness to them. And the art, it's Tool. The art is as awesome as you would expect. It fits the vibe of the backstory, which is, again, not just wrote good versus evil. Well, it is kind of, but it's not like, Imperials and settlers and whatever. So that you got to give credit for. And the actual game flow itself, this is where it gets a little bit. You'll hear this a lot. Like, it's really not that complicated once you go through it. And you know what? Unfortunately, for all my triteness, yes. It is simple and smooth. It really is. At bird's eye level, it all clicks into place. The flow is not difficult at all. You run these steps once. You run these steps twice. You run these steps 3 times. It's where you jump off the train and what you do while you're off the train before jumping back on the train of the game flow. That's where things get real, like, crazy. The complexity weaves into the subsections of play that drive the actual choices, not necessarily the game flow itself. And, this is a game that's unashamedly deeply complex. In a surface area of choices. It doesn't, I don't think it needs to apologize either. It sets out what the manual, what the rule, what the blurbs on it about it, it sets up to do what it says Dude, but is the game flow simple? Yes, but the explosions of variations and consideration points, they balloon into this fine mental puzzle that you're going to be solving. There's many gears, there's many levers to turn and manipulate. That makes decisions less obvious and requires more brain time, particularly as you think forward. Once you get comfortable with this game flow, the next thing is thinking forward. And sometimes in those phases when you're learning, yes, there will be analysis paralysis, or at least analysis impediment. But that's part of the joy of the game. And if that, again, that's not for everyone. It just isn't, but it's definitely for me. And then the other thing is, is this a Euro? Is this a 4X? Does it work? Is that possible? Yes, with noted trade-offs. Combat is not style, it's substance. Combat is equal partner with other things going on in the game. It's not this trumping overlord that you aim for to actually be the whole of the experience. It's still fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It is a clinical, strategic view of the battles going on. It's a clever way to build forces, but not get caught up in the minutiae of managing, fleets. The fleets have substance, but they're ephemeral in how they're presented and capped to avoid overloading military over other avenues of concerns in this game. There's so many ways to play and replay and revisit this game. It is going to be around for years to come. Your houses, plenty of them, and they're quite different. The scenarios, tons. Co-op? Yeah, great. Does everyone in the world hate you? Solo's great too. Matter of fact, I think I'll be playing solo probably at least 3/4 of the time. Yeah. So this is there's no argument here. This is a top-notch solo game. So final thoughts, and I'm not gonna grab the box because Gumby arms. When someone suggests let's make a 4X and a Euro, certain things go into your mind, like Eclipse. We all many of us have played Eclipse, whatever, and in the feeling like okay, that's kind of, I get it, kind of it, but it still tended to be more towards 4X kind of style with and less of the Euro. This could have gone wrong so many ways, or at least it could have gone very differently so many ways. This is sometimes you have a Euro but kind of, and it's really the 4X, and then you can have a 4X but you have a small Euro-ish kind of presence. This is all in on both counts, with the caveat that 4X might not be as fully satisfied by definition as the Euro part, by some small margin. But it is a tribute to the sheer audacity to pull this off, to flavor the deep Euro experience with 4X space scope while staying true to forging the concepts of those Euro mechanisms to a feasible space counterpart. The game is thinky, the game is deep, the game is complex. The game is full of content. This is how I felt about Mage Knight, which it's not mass darkness, massive darkness, whatever. It's not that kind of fun frolicky. I cast magic missile on my face. It's more of a Mage Knight itself in the same way. I feel like there's a parallel there more than there is in other comparisons. To a point, Mage Knight does go off more magically. And it's there are people that really have dinged this, I think, for that. And I'm not going to speak too negatively on that because everyone, this game isn't for everybody. But it's sort of like I would caution you in the same way. Here's the thing: when I grew up next to an airport. We moved there when I was 5. I left there when I was 24. We were right next to an airport. And so I grew up with tons of noise at night. I knew at 3:10 the 747 would land. I knew these things, and I loved them. It was great. I knew what I was getting into, and so it never bothered me. But then over time, people started moving in, and pretty soon there were petitions and there were complaints like, oh, the noise is too loud. And I'm like, did you not know what you were getting into? Like, you get used to it, but people didn't. And the same thing's like Iron Man. Like one of my friends who joined up to Iron Man didn't do any training and then complained about how awful it was. Well, yeah. Did you not know what you were getting into? So I would caveat that by saying, if you're going to take advantage of Voidfall, watch the many, many videos. Grab the app, which someone did out of a labor of love, which honestly is great. I play that online too now. That's a great opportunity. Like, thank you for that freebie. Know what you're getting into. Like almost all of the Nigel and Cersei games, the Imperium Legends, Imperium Classics has a similar vibe in that you will look at it and go, oh, cool, a little Civ card game. And it's not. It's a full meaty Civ using cards as a conduit to how that civ is played out. And so you can be caught off guard without going into it going, this is a meaty game, these are the pieces that support that meaty experience. And so know what you're getting into. Before this game, I considered David's Xerxes. He made a game called Defensive Procyon that was, I thought, the grail game. It was the lifetime game, the game someone makes once in a lifetime because it's so outlandishly out of the box and crazy and over the top. That game was 4 different factions in a space theme. Each faction was incredibly different. Think Root, but even more different. Voidfall exceeds that. I didn't think it was possible. It is wildly grand, wildly scoped, wildly vast, vastfall. If you get into it. If you like the core experience, that's where it shines. If you don't, definitely. I mean, if you're a 4X player, would you like this? Well, beware. Investigate. Try. There are times when I want a 4X where I've got like big spaceships shooting each other, and there's lots of stuff that I don't have to make up in my mind. That's not where this will lie. And if you're a Euro gamer wondering about this as far as a 4X, there's meat on these bones. There really is. And it's consistent and it's solid. Yeah, there's meat. You will not go, well, they watered down the, nobody watered down this Euro. So if Euro interested at all in a 4X existential collaboration of space and Euro, then this is a premier, vast, full, complete, complex, thinking in a silent, contemplative way kind of experience like no other. It's not for everyone, but it's definitely for me. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time on Harebrained Games.